Today we're going to vote on 6 nominees, and before I turn to nominations, let me say a few words. First, I want to commend the House for passing legislation sponsored by Senators Cornyn and Coons to ensure the Supreme Court's police can protect the families of the Supreme Court justices. Contrary to allegations from some House Democrats, House Democrats did not want to deny these protections to justices' families. They wanted to expand them. I'm glad the House passed the Senate bill in the interest of getting this bill to the President's desk, but let's continue to work on this. The security and safety of people working in the judicial branch, as in the legislative branch, is a matter of great importance to all of us. We need to move forward immediately with bipartisan legislation reported by this committee to protect all federal judges from the threat they face when personal information is posted online. This is an issue near and dear to Senators Booker and Menendez because of the horrible situation which transpired in their state. The Daniel Anderl Judicial Security and Privacy Act is sponsored by them and Senator Graham and many other members of the committee. There's one Republican senator holding this up on the floor. Enough. The reports of the danger that many of their families are facing is just a call to action for all of us, and whatever the differences of opinion, I hope this senator can be persuaded to finally let this move forward. I also want to commend this bipartisan groups of senators working on legislation to protect America from gun violence. This framework they've announced doesn't include everything I want, but it's a credible bipartisan compromise on an issue where the American people are begging for action. Many members of the committee are involved in this on the Democratic side, Senator Cornyn, of course, leading on the Republican side. We have the opportunity today to take another step toward making the nation safer, voting to advance Stephen Denelbach, his nomination to be head of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. They've had only one confirmed director since the position was made subject to Senate confirmation in 2006, and it's not had a confirmed director since 2015. 7 years, no leadership. I cannot overstate the importance of having Senate-confirmed leadership at the top of the ATF. For stability and for responsiveness, for accountability, for agency morale, this is long overdue. I believe Steve Denelbach is the person to get that done. At root, Mr. Denelbach is a career public servant. I can go through his background, which is very impressive, but we all heard it when he presented his credentials to the committee. His nomination has been endorsed by virtually every major law enforcement organization in the country, including, and I say to my friends on the Republican side, I know they are always tuned in, the National Sheriff's Association support Mr. Denelbach, and the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and many others. I could go through the long list. It speaks to the importance of these organizations and dozens more, and the significance they place on finally having a Senate-confirmed director. The bipartisan gun safety framework makes clear the Senate can still cross party lines to get things done. I hope that happens today in this committee. I'm now going to turn to Senator Grassley for his remarks.
I'm going to be voting for the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of California. We can have a voice vote on Mr. Talbert. I'll also be supporting Judge Wang. I want to talk a little bit about the nominee for ATF. When his nomination was announced, I wrote to the administration expressing concern about his record. Unfortunately, his hearing did not address those concerns. He couldn't identify any gun control regulation that he disagreed with Mr. Chipman, the previous nominee. He couldn't define what an assault weapon was, despite for them he was calling for them to be banned. He inaccurately described how background checks work at gun shows, and he couldn't say whether or not he thought ATF should be reopening closed investigations and revoking the licenses for federal firearm licensees for what the agency previously thought were minor violations. The focus on over-regulating the industry is concerning. The administration removed the former acting director Marv Richardson, New York Times, reported that gun control groups criticized him for, quote, deploying agents to deal with gun violence, end of quote. Gun control advocates wanted him to focus more on regulating the industry and focus less on law enforcement. I think the agency should be focused on law enforcement. Mr. Denelbach did not provide an explanation for why the firearm prosecutions dropped by more than 50% while he was the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio. So here are the statistics. He said the drop in prosecutions wasn't the result of policy choice. For years, at least 120 firearms cases had been filed every year. In 2015, only 75 were filed. In 2016, only 65. In 2017, the number was back to 124 under the Trump administration. Because Mr. Denelbach was unable to address my concerns, I will oppose. I yield.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Feinstein.
Thank you very much. I'd like to speak in support of Steve Denelbach's nomination to lead the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. ATF has not had a Senate-confirmed director since 2015. Gun violence continues to plague this country, and I believe it's critical that ATF has a strong Senate-confirmed leader in place to ensure the agency is able to achieve its mission of protecting our communities from both violent criminals as well as the illegal use of firearms. Mr. Denelbach has decades of experience serving as a federal prosecutor, including 7 years as a United States Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio. He knows what it takes to prosecute gun crimes, and I know the mixed view on this committee. And he has a firsthand experience enforcing our nation's gun laws, which is something that we need in the ATF. As Mr. Denelbach told this committee in confirmation, he will be a strong enforcer of our nation's gun laws. That's what this vote is all about for me. He will coordinate with state and local law enforcement. He'll work with Congress to make sure we have the information we need to do our jobs in setting our nation's gun policy. I believe Mr. Denelbach is clearly qualified to lead ATF and will provide the leadership with some guts needed to effectively enforce our laws and protect Americans from gun violence. I urge my colleagues to vote aye. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Leahy.
No, I'll reserve my remarks regarding Mr. Denelbach for later. And obviously, I support him.
Yep.
So we're waiting for a few members to show up, and we welcome all who are here. And so under the Senate Judiciary Committee rules, there are some nominees that can be considered with present attendance. And we'll start with Nina Wong, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the District of Colorado. Unanimously well-qualified rating by the ABA. Anyone seek recognition to speak on this nomination? If not, on favorably reporting Nina Wong, U.S. District Judge for the District of Colorado, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal. Aye. Mr. Rono. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Graham.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Corning. Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
Chair, if I could be recorded as here as I, thank you.
Senator Klobuchar will be reported present and voting.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 14 yeas, 8 nays.
Nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Sarah Miriam to the Second Circuit, rated unanimously well qualified. Anyone wish to speak on her nomination? Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I know we have a lot to do this morning, so I'm going to insert my statement in the record, but just briefly say that Judge Merriam reflects the tremendous experience, character, and intellect that is paramount to serving in our judicial system. She has said before that she believes, quote, partisan politics have no place in judicial chambers, and I believe that she will carry this practice with her to the Court of Appeals, just as she has followed it in the district court. She was confirmed for the district court with broad bipartisan support, and I hope that she will be to this position as well. She is called a, quote, highly qualified and competent jurist, end quote, by the prosecutors who have worked with her and who know her work as well as anyone. And I am very proud to support her nomination. She is a judge's judge, and she will be an extraordinary addition to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. If no one else seeks recognition, the clerk will call the roll on the nomination of Sarah Miriam to the U.S. Circuit Judge for the Second Circuit.
Mr. Lady.
Aye.
Mrs. Weinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
No.
Mr. Graham.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Corning.
No.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sass.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No. No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 12 yeas, 10 nays.
Nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. The next nomination is Laura Montecalvo to the First Circuit, rated well qualified by the ABA. Does anyone seek recognition to speak?
I do, Chairman.
Senator Whitehouse is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Colleagues may remember Ms. Montecalvo as the nominee who had a letter of support from all former Rhode Island attorneys general and from our entire Supreme Court and from a broad array of our district and superior court bench and from a great number of prosecutors and former prosecutors, including her husband, Craig, who was with her, supporting her in the hearing, and from police chiefs from all around the state. Obviously, part of the reason for this support is that as appellate chief in the public defender's office, she brings outstanding expertise. As a former DOJ civil litigant, she's also familiar with the federal side. But at the end of the day, you don't get that kind of support unless you're what we would call in Rhode Island good people. And Laura Montecalvo is good people, very well regarded, and in her expertise, her demeanor, and her work ethic, she will be a very welcome addition to the First Circuit, and I urge my colleagues to vote in her favor.
Thank you very much, Senator Whitehouse. On favorably reporting the nomination of Laura Montecalvo to be U.S. Circuit Judge for the First Circuit, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
No.
Mr. Graham.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Corning. Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sacks.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 12 yeas, 10 nays.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is the nomination of Tiffany Courtright for the Western District of Washington, unanimously qualified by the ABA. Anyone seek recognition? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
No.
Mr. Graham.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Corning. Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sacks.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, the votes are 12 yeas, 10 nays.
Nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. The next nomination is Steve Denelbach to serve as ATF Director. Does anyone seek recognition to speak? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
Aye.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Grassley.
No.
Mr. Graham.
No by proxy.
Mr. Corning. Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sacks.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, this is a tie vote, 11 yeas, 11 nays.
The committee's recorded a tie vote on Mr. Denelbach's nomination to be ATF Director pursuant to Section 3, subsection 1A of Senate Resolution 27 of the 117th Congress. I'll transmit to the Secretary of Senate a notice of the tie vote. Under Section 3, subsection 1B of that resolution, either the majority or minority leader may then make a motion to discharge the nomination. Finally, we have one U.S. Attorney on the agenda today, Philip Talbert from the Eastern District of California. I understand we can have a voice vote on Mr. Talbert. Does anyone seek recognition on this nominee? If not, on favorably reporting the nomination of Philip Talbert to be U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of California, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Majority of the members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The nomination will...
I got that right here. We have Senators Cruz, Hawley, and Blackburn would like to be recorded as no on this U.S. Attorney.
Without objection, they'll be so reported. The majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor, and with that, the meeting stands adjourned. Did you want to speak, Senator Leahy?
No, I'm just going to speak very briefly about Stephen Denelbach. At a time when we're all talking about what we have to do on gun issues and all, to say we cannot have an extraordinarily highly qualified person to be head of ATF makes a mockery of all the statements that have been made. I'm disappointed because one senator, who I will not name, had told me yesterday he would pass on this. Obviously, he has the right to change his mind. I'm sorry, did not keep the commitment he made to me. But I think that it's, it makes a mockery of the discussion. We're certainly going to do something to stop gun violence, but we can't vote to have the head of ATF. I'm very, very disappointed that happened, especially with Steve Denelbach, a man who's extraordinarily qualified, probably the most qualified person for this job I've ever seen. I will continue to support him on the floor.
No one else seek
Mr. Chairman, Senator Coons.
Senator Coons?
If I might just briefly, I too just wanted to express my deep disappointment at the outcome of this vote. I worked, when I was in county government, I worked with the IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, closely. And I was struck. I had the chance to ask Chief Jerry Williams of the Phoenix Police Department about the significance of having a Senate-confirmed ATF director and about the qualifications of this nominee. And the IACP wrote this committee to say that Mr. Denelbach's experience, expertise, and record of success are evidence of his outstanding qualifications to serve as director of the ATF. I'm just very disappointed that we've had a tie vote in this committee today. I think it impedes our progress on trying to tackle what is a nationwide epidemic of gun violence.
Anyone else seek recognition? If not, the Senate Judiciary Committee stands adjourned.
Yeah, I checked.